Welcome to Perspectives On, where we're giving the world a voice. We are a faith-based social justice forum where individuals give their perspectives on various topics. It's an opportunity to express their viewpoint, their stance, and their angle on justice issues affecting the community and globally. Each episode features guests presenting their perspective on things like climate change, the church, urban farming, and food insecurity, all through a unique faith lens. Come check us out. Give us your perspective. Welcome to Perspectives on Social Justice, where we are, as always, giving the world a voice. I am Lyra Lane White, your host. Today, we are talking about the controversy surrounding a racial issue that is rocking states almost everywhere. The critical race theory has been all the buzz in the education systems and boards across the country. Politicians have issued statements and passed measures forbidding the teaching of this mindset, this movement. Now, Wikipedia defines critical race theory as an academic movement of scholars and activists seeking to critically examine ways the U.S. justice system intersects with racial issues and challenges some of the mainstream liberal approaches to justice. It is a movement that has been circulating among civil rights scholars since the late 1970s. But it was not until the 1990s that Dr. Gloria Ladson-Billings introduced a framework for education examining systemic inequities in school systems. Well, since then, there's been a contingency of activists, including the 1619 Project Nicole Hannah-Jones, that have sought to reframe the story of U.S. history to include the byproducts of slavery and the contributions of African Americans. This is a great work on the part of Nicole Hannah-Jones, but these are not brand new constructs or realms of social activism. These rather reflect on frameworks or schools of thoughts of the likes of Kimberly Crenshaw, Richard Delgado, Randall Robinson, and Derek Bell. The latest dialogue focuses on the critical race theory, also called CRT, but it has intensified in part because of this new band of 21st century scholars and activists that are challenging the American history narrative going all the way back to the Revolutionary War and its purpose, not just the Civil War. But what is at the heart of this 21st century conversation? What's really fueling the latest fire that has state boards of education and politicians forbidding the teaching of this mindset? It would seem that it could be a combination of the moral unrest brought on by the pandemic, the death of George Floyd, with other incidents of police brutality, and America's recent political transitions, particularly as they play out on social media. But each, due to historical timing, has painted a kind of new picture, a new paradigm shift in power biases or images. All of this is resulting in a sort of smashing of the romantic picture of American history. But earlier in the week, we asked the following question in our Facebook group. Did your elementary school, high school, or college adequately educate you on issues pertaining to the history of slavery and the heroes of the civil rights movement prior to Dr. King? We got a resounding response of no. Well, it is the prayer of this professional in ministry that the education systems seek ways to teach American history that is void of racially biased disparities and present history in such a way that it does not foster ill values or illustrate an ugly picture on any race or demographic. Will that happen in my lifetime? Probably not. But churches, especially the Black church, should examine ways that they have failed to educate congregations on Black history. Even my own African Methodist Episcopal Church could brush up just a little bit more on the ways in which they teach this valuable phase of American history. So tonight we have some scholars that will come, and of course they are members of clergy, and we will come and uh, we will discuss just that. We're going to discuss ways in which the education system can do, and what is it that the church can do. First, we have the Reverend Velma Grant with us, and Reverend Grant is uh, currently the pastor of Flipper Chapel AME Church in Fayetteville, here in Georgia, and she is an educator. So we're glad to have her here tonight. We have the Reverend Dr. Paul Q. Fortson. Dr. Fortson is currently an elder at the Paradise Church of God in Christ in Forest, here in Forest Park, Georgia. And last but not least, we have the Reverend Michael Malcolm, who is with us tonight. Reverend Malcolm is the executive director of the People's Justice Council. And we are glad to have you guys here tonight. We're going to get right to the business of, and we're all smiling. And so we're gonna get right down to business. The first question, we're just gonna address the issue at hand. What are your thoughts about the nature of the critical race theory, and how does the CRT and the 1619 fit into the framework? Anybody?
Well, ladies first tonight.
Okay.
Well, let me say this in my humble opinion. Talk about briefly what it is not, what all of these conservatives and these pundits are sharing and frightening folks about. Critical race theory, it's not about making people feel bad. First of all, it is not racist. It's not divisive. It's simply a way to probe or highlight how the color of a person's affects their life all in all levels of society. Why? Because racism is at the central core of American life. And so when we have these discussions, when we talk about these subjects, it's not meant for people to feel bad. If they feel bad, well, maybe they need to investigate why they're feeling bad. Okay. But the way that these conservatives and these folks are trying to turn everything into a divisive subject, it's not the intent of critical race theory. It's to spark discussion so folks see the ugly and make a determination to move away from the ugly.
That's right. Anybody else?
Well, I agree. I agree what you said earlier. I mean that what it's doing is it's smashing this romanticized narrative about American history. Yes, a valid perspective. It can't help but be a valid perspective when we see how racism and bias has affected our lives. Those of us who have lived it, when it's our lived perspectives. Yeah, my personal lived perspective, the legitimacy and the validity of critical race theory is unquestionable. No, the thing about me, I'm almost at the point now, is that I'm wondering why they call it a theory, because I've lived it. I mean, theories are intangible. Theories are things that you debate and maybe are subjective. No, we live this. I don't know about the subjectivity of it. My disappointment might be that they calling it a theory.
That's
But
right.
hey, that's that. Yes, the short answer to your question, Dr. White, is that yes, the perspective is valid, and that we definitely, as the church, as the African American church, uh, should not neglect any longer to uh, give this history, to speak this history. But when you think about things like Juneteenth and those kinds of things, I was so surprised at how many people who had never heard of Juneteenth, and it had reached the point where it was um, 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 given national holiday status. And I was surprised there's so many people who had no idea about Juneteenth. I,
Right.
I'm glad that critical race theory has had this much momentum.
I mean, when I was growing up, I grew up in Georgia. This was really the kind of the seat of the civil rights movement. I went to school with a lot of Dr. King's contemporaries' children. And so my teachers, and I was in elementary school and high school, in elementary school in the 1970s
Hmm.
when the critical race theory was basically born. And so my educators made it their business because I grew up in a largely segregated community. It was all black. In high school, my teachers were mostly black, went to an all black church. So they made it their business to teach us about. But it was not until I went to school out west in Texas that people, I found this a lot of education systems, people didn't know who Mary McLeod Bethune was. They didn't really know who a lot of the like I said earlier, a lot of the activists before Dr. King. It was just a lot of different, a whole different perspective. But when I was growing up, they made it their business. So while I did not live it firsthand, I did receive a lot of knowledge about it. Yeah.
I'm here so I can look holy.
So while you're looking holy, let me agree with Dr. Fortson in saying, yeah, to us it's reality. This
Yeah.
has been our reality since the first book docked in what 1619. So it's not a theory for us. All right.
Right.
It's reality when our loans are denied because of our
That's
color.
right.
It's reality when we're trying to get equal access to adequate education for our children, whether they're living on the north side or the south side. It's reality for us, and especially now for Black women who are having children, who are experiencing so much death with pregnancy. It's reality for us, right?
Right.
When we know that we're passed over because we know we're qualified than somebody who has a lighter pigment, but so it's no theory. It's not abstract. It's concrete reality for Black men and Black women.
Well,
Absolutely.
and I think that's what critical race theory actually does, and that's what causes all the trauma. It raises a mirror up before the people, so that
That's right.
before white folk. Let me be clear and let me be frank and just have frank conversation. It raises a mirror up before white folk and it makes them feel uncomfortable. And because they have the majority opinion, they get to dictate whether or not they have to feel uncomfortable. However, we as black folk been feeling uncomfortable since we got here.
Come on now.
And that's what we're trying to tell them. I was having a conversation, and Dr. White don't get on me later on about this, but I was having a conversation with some folks in a working group that I'm a part of, and I was telling them, when it comes down to racism, that's a white folk stuff. That ain't our stuff. We aren't innately racist, and we aren't the ones that are causing the trauma. We just want to live in peace. Y'all just won't let us.
That's right.
And you need to learn about that. You need to learn about the ways that you have obstructed a whole civilization of people from being at peace so
Absolutely.
you can correct it.
Hmm. Hmm. And I can certainly see, understand the image. I mean, the energy that's coming from as a result of that's coming from different parts of the country, and it's really fueling the perspectives on the different people um, throughout the country as we talk about this. But the critical race theory in academia tends to focus heavily on the impact of that racism has had on the justice system. And then with what happened last summer with Mr. Floyd's death, right? And all
Right.
the incidents that we have had in police brutality and what we're seeing happen in the penitentiaries, and the population of the penitentiary being largely African American males. There is conversation about how that brand of racism is intersecting on the justice system. And so what's happened is the conversation was had back in the 1970s, but because of what has gone on in the past year, I say the past 2 years, especially with the beginning of the 1619 project, which set out to reframe American history, going back to the Revolutionary Wars. We've been talking about the Civil War, but really this 1619 the Revolutionary War, and they're attempting to rewrite history. And so a lot of that does kind of upset the romantic story apple cart for especially in the education system. So how can
Dr. Laura Lane, just to push back a little bit, it does actually talk about the education system, but it goes further to say all systems have been affected by racism, and in particular anti-Black racism. So I'd love to limit it just to the justice system, but unfortunately, it's not just the justice system. It is all policy. Even today, right now, I got a call a couple of hours ago, or a few hours ago. They're getting ready or trying to pass laws that will basically test us on their new innovations that they want to come up with to bring down carbon emissions. Listen, racism, the system of racism is permeated everywhere. And we don't need to just look at one particular aspect. We need to look at all systems and deal with the racism that exists at the foundation of all systems.
That's Dr. Laura Lane. That's what I was going to say, Brother Malcolm. You are correct. That critical race theorists are particularly interested in power structures. That's really what it says. And it says that because these power structures, all of structures, are inherently infused with this racism, then there is nothing in any sort of construct that's not racist. And so their whole idea is you got to change the whole values of the entire society, period, the end. Deconstruct the status quo and reconstruct another structure, power structure. I can't say that I'm completely at odds with that, because what do you do? I mean, what do you do with something that's infected from the inside out?
Absolutely right. And this critical race theory, one of the questions was, has American culture suffered? Right? And so it's only suffered because of the foolishness of these conservatives who do not want to acknowledge their role in racism. And so, when we talk about the critical race theory, we are saying, you've got to admit your role in racism, whether it's racism in the educational system, it's racism in the legal system, is racism in the corporate world. You've got to acknowledge, look, racism in the political world, right? You're very quick to make Juneteenth a national holiday, all good. But yet still, you want to cause or start a filibuster just so you don't pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. What's up with that?
Yes.
Well, Reverend Velma, let me go a little bit further. You implemented or you acknowledged the holiday that we were already doing anyway. I let you know, at 9/19, we were already partying up on June 10th. Just to let y'all know that. We didn't need them to tell us it was a holiday. We took that.
Absolutely.
However, when they gave us this holiday or acknowledged this holiday, but if you look at the news now, IKEA is in trouble because they came up with a menu on this holiday that included fried chicken and watermelon, which is stereotypically to stereotypical for black folk. And so when you look at it, although policy has been passed, society still sees us in an anti-black racist
My
state.
God. My God.
So we've got to acknowledge that and deal with it. And critical race theory does that. And the reason why they don't want to acknowledge it is because it makes them uncomfortable. And the reality is we live in a society that we keep white folk comfortable.
Oh my God.
And I don't
Oh
care.
my God.
I don't care who hears that and who needs to hear that again. I will repeat that to the day till I'm blue in the face. We live in a society that keep white folk comfortable.
All right, so now
and
it's
can I
time for them
add,
to
Brother
feel the
Malcolm?
discomfort. Now it's time for
And,
them to feel the discomfort, to be uncomfortable, because the only way they're going to acknowledge their role in this racist, oppressive system is to be uncomfortable
But
and to feel some discomfort.
but Dr. Velma, look at George Floyd. Let's go back. Dr. Paul brought up George Floyd. Let's look at the George Floyd situation and what happened that summer. Everybody acknowledged that this country is racist. Everybody acknowledged that there's racism in society. Have we had the George Floyd Act to pass yet? All these corporations put out statements, and they were upset with me because I was like, damn your statements. Give me
right.
some money. They were upset with me. I'm serious. But at the same time, I understood your statement doesn't mean a thing if it doesn't have any action behind it.
Right.
It's
Right.
just words. And we've had a bunch of words, but no action.
Very
Listen,
true.
you've seen, and I'm not being racist, and I'm not trying to single out any particular group of people when I say this, but you saw a couple of folk get knocked out that were of the Asian descent on television. Immediately they passed the act that protected Asians.
That was a slap in the face.
George Floyd Act still sitting out there. The
Slap in the face.
Anti-Lynching Act still sitting out there. The Voting
God.
Rights Act still sitting out there. So
Brother Malcolm, I'm gonna add
I
this.
don't need your acknowledgement. Your only acknowledgement for me is pay me. Give me what I owe. Give me my protection. Give me some money. Give me reparations. I don't have anything else that I want to talk to you about. I want to see your actions. That's the only thing you can speak at this point, because your words mean nothing.
Brother Malcolm, I'm gonna add something to you because you have given a spirited and passionate discourse on that. Let me add something to keep them comfortable, but we also live in a country that's to keep them comfortable, but to keep black folk high, to keep them to keep them high. So does anyone else other than me find the irony of the fact that when they pass some of the most racist voting laws since Jim Crow, since Reconstruction, they turned around and gave us a shot of liquor called Juneteenth, or they gave us a blunt called Juneteenth. Yeah, we keep them comfortable, but it's also a country that keep them comfortable, but it's to keep us high.
But look at the history. Look at the history of Juneteenth, Red. The history of Juneteenth. That's what they did at the very beginning.
Easy.
At the very beginning, they passed this law. They read the general order or number 3.
Oh, okay.
And this order said that y'all free.
That's right.
However, you got to go back to your oppressor, and you got to make some accommodations for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You need to bargain with your oppressor.
My God.
So you have some work. And you can't sit around and don't depend on the government to take care of you. That's what they said in that order. And the history says that the people went out and they started a celebration in Galveston, Texas called Juneteenth. And that's how we came up with Juneteenth. The government gave them Juneteenth. All they got out of that entire deal of 400 years of slavery was a celebration.
Was a barbecue.
God.
Oh man.
And and that
God.
I think that kind of answers the question that I was going to ask about how has American culture suffered, especially African Americans suffer as a result of not having the knowledge or not having more uh, uh, intercession, if you will, from from the government that we are, we're Americans. And so I think that kind of answers the question of when you talk about the history of how Juneteenth came into being. But my next question is, will the American justice system benefit or be harmed, if, in your opinion, if we teach a brand of the critical race theory? If education systems would include that in their curriculums or in their day-to-day sharings, will that impact the justice system as we know it today? And will it be positive or negative? Reverend Grant?
Look, I'm saying the effects of racism is already apparent in the number of Black men and Black women that are shot by police for simple things, right? And on the other hand, the lives of white people are spared for, them committing more horrible crimes. I mean, you think about that. When white people commit crimes, they get a slap on the wrist. And when Black people commit crimes, they are tried and convicted and serve, you know, uh, a tremendous amount of years for some simple things. So that doesn't have anything to do with the current discussion about CRT. It's already evident in the legal system. It's long been evident. And we know this because it's what we have been living. So it's nothing new to us. Whether we begin teaching it as critical race theory in the schools, or not, we've already been affected by it negatively.
I don't know, and I'll say this: I don't know if it'll be benefited or harm, but I sure hope it'll be changed. And that's what they don't want is for it to be changed. Now, if that system is ever going to be a positive system toward us, it's gonna have to be changed. I don't want it to be harmed or benefited. I want it to be deconstructed and reconstructed. I want it to be in consideration of what it has wrought on us since its time. Reverend Grant said it correctly. Man, we get 20 years for jaywalking. You heard me, and then and they'll get 20 served 3 for murder. Come on, for real? That ain't how that
And
ain't
get
how
a
this works.
hamburger on the
That
way
needs
to
to be
jail.
done. And get a hamburger on the way to jail.
I was looking at a video first thing this morning, and there's this white guy just running around, gun, just flashing gun in front of this open crowd. Police chasing him. He just pulling out his gun and just flashing it all over the place. And I thought, Tamir Rice got killed over a toy gun
A toy
on the
gun.
God.
playground. Both of them
Yeah.
done. We don't even know what he got killed for because he was sitting on his couch eating ice cream. George Floyd got killed over what they think was a counterfeit $20
A
bill.
counterfeit $20 bill.
Sandra Bland got killed just because she talked back to the police.
My God.
Well, that one got a lot of folk killed.
Wouldn't put a
True.
I'm talking about the folks that's highlighted in our modern times that have been killed, no longer exist, while this boy is running around flashing this gun all over the place, and they apprehend him with no incident.
Right. So
And even said, and the police even, I'm sorry, Doc, even the police even said, we noticed when we came up that the hammer was locked, so we knew there was nothing in the clip. There was no bullets in the chamber. I'm sorry.
So-
Hold on. You took that much time to look that situation over?
No.
Without
No,
shooting.
are you that trained now? No. You that trained now. Okay, when it's us, you were fearful for your life, but now you trained enough to zero in on a hammer that's being waved around.
But we saw you. We saw you literally pull up in your car and shoot this 12-year-old boy for
Within
playing with a
seconds.
toy gun on the
Mm.
playground, and you
Mm.
pulled up in your car and shot through your car to kill him. You ain't look at. I'm sorry. I almost went there.
Okay.
Come on, man.
I'm
Facts.
a respect.
Come on, Reverend.
That's facts.
All right. So
You
here,
didn't look
Reality.
at a thing when that was happening, but you had an opportunity or enough time to
so
look at this.
all right. So here's food for thought for you guys then. Okay. So
Mhm.
if we start to be intentional about teaching the critical race theory in our public schools, if we are able to convince education systems that they need to focus more on the critical race theory in public schools, actually add it to as some form of their curriculum. Do we want, if we were to teach it based on our understanding of what we have discussed tonight, if we were to teach it to young people with the same energy and the same zest, and that if we were to teach it to young people the same way we talked about it tonight, do you think that would I don't know incite feelings of tension among young people if we take the approach that we've taken tonight?
Yeah. You said incite fear?
Not fear, but will that incite, will they, like
Would it motivate them? Is that what you're
Would it
asking?
motivate them?
when we were back in elementary school and we watched Roots, a lot of people were angry with watching.
Yeah.
So given the way in which we have discussed it tonight, right, just in this past few minutes, if we were assigned to teach young people about the critical race theory with the same energy that we just discussed tonight, do you think that would incite some anger or some frustration or among young people?
I want to answer that first.
Okay.
I don't know that they aren't already frustrated. I don't know that they aren't already motivated.
That's
I
right.
don't know that they aren't
I got
already.
if we go on and teach that the way in the same energy.
I'm Doc, I'm a preacher. I got to work there now. Hold on. let me work. Let me work through.
Work, sir. Work now.
I don't think that that's an issue. That's not the issue.
Okay.
Looking at us is not the issue. We aren't the ones to push this. Again, I said in the beginning, racism is not our issue. What happens or the consequences of racism are not our fault. Hold the people who need to be at blame or at fault, hold them at fault. The ones who benefit from it. Those are the ones who need to push.
See, Reverend, I don't know if I agree with you on that because
okay, let's talk about it.
Because racism, I think we as African Americans, people of color, people who are the minority, people who are disenfranchised in this country, they suffer because of racism. So there's an impact that the notion of racism has on cultures of persons of color.
I didn't say that.
Right.
I didn't speak against that.
But you're saying that we need to hold the people accountable. Why does it? I guess I'm having trouble understanding it. Why does it?
Let me jump in. Let me jump in. I think it's both ends. I think it's both ends.
Let me respond directly.
Because I don't. You said we need to hold people accountable, but in a way though, we kind of need to hold ourselves accountable as well. That's why I asked that. That question: if we teach the critical race theory or some form of the critical race theory in the same way that we've just talked about it, okay, how would that impact our young people?
And I'm saying the same things that we've experienced are the same things that they experience. They don't need us to help fire them up. They're already fired up.
And they're the ones in the street marching.
Okay. Right. If you look at it, they're the ones that's holding this movement.
Right.
That's right.
Is that
That's right.
constructive though? Is it constructive?
Yeah.
Is what constructive?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
If it wasn't for them, we wouldn't be hollering Black Lives Matter.
True.
I mean, just we can't discount our young folk. They the ones been holding this. We're
Yeah.
supposed to be sitting back supporting and teaching them.
That's correct. But see, Dr. Forson said earlier about change, right? So it may not happen in our lifetime, but ultimately we want to create a society where all young people can accept one another's culture, where where diversity is embraced. And it may seem like
Doc, that has to be intentional. That has to be intentional.
Of course,
But you saying of course, but you're saying you're still putting the onus on us to make it happen.
it is.
We come to the table.
It's on us. It is on us.
So you and I think we'll disagree on that. I don't think
may I please? Because what I think is that it is a both and. I think it's important for them to have their feet held to the fire because it is them who created and orchestrated and executed the system. But it's also incumbent upon us to not shut up. We got to keep up a fuss. No. We're not gonna wait on you to come bring us nothing, bro. We finna go get this. And so we gotta hold them accountable. But then it's a both hand, bro, because we can't sit back and be passive. And I think I'm gonna get in trouble for this one. And I think that's what the church did to us by telling us simply God was gonna take care. We'll understand later by and by. He made you sit on your behind. It created passivity, and it's a few of us decided to go out there and get this thing. You heard me? And at the end of the day, they got to be held accountable, but we ain't gonna shut up. We ain't shutting up. We gonna march and do whatever we do.
Right, and so Dr. White, let me just say this. I can jump in real quick. All right, so critical race theory, it's not taught at the public school level. All right, this is a course for young adults, a course for college students, and so those white students who might not have had any lessons or coursework in high school, etc., have not maybe had any encounter with any Black people during their elementary, high school. Now, when they get to college, they have this course, right? And so this course, should open up their eyes, if you will, because some white folks don't really understand that you're white, and no matter how poor you are, there's still some privilege attributed to your whiteness. Okay, and so what we have to do, we have to keep on talking. I know Dr. says, I'm tired of talking. I want to hear you talking more. I want actions. Yes, but if I can just say, we just have to continue talking, telling our young people that you are, more than conquerors. Okay, yes, it's a cliche, but telling them that you're not all the stereotypes that are ascribed to you. And telling these white folks, because of your whiteness, you do have some privileges. Because of your whiteness, you can skirt some of the rules and some of the things that affect Black people just because they are Black. And so we'll continue to talk about race, right? Whether or not we identify it as critical race theory, whether or not we identify it as a 1619 project, we're going to continue to talk about race because there are inequities in this country, because this country is centrally focused on racism. And so we'll continue to talk until the words of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. rings true when he says what? I wish for a time where folks will be judged not by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. Y'all, we ain't there yet. All right? We are not there yet, and we still have a long way to go.
Yes, we do.
That's right.
Yes, we do.
Right.
Yes, we
and
do.
Passion, to your question specifically, Dr. White, the passion we got tonight, yes, it will incite. It will, because it's passionate and it will incite. However, it won't change until we teach it as normalized, until we until this is the regular teaching. This is the normal teaching in the system, and that may take, as Dr. Grant said, that may take a generation or two for that to happen, because the education system is one of those power structures that's infused and inundated with the racism.
Absolutely.
So,
Dr. Forsyth, I don't think it will take a generation or two. I think the generation is already here that is doing it. Again, Black Lives Matter was completely different than anything we've ever seen, and it was held by young people.
that's right.
When it arose, you heard a whole lot of folk in the church and a whole lot of black folk that were hollering about y'all need not to be because of respectability politics. And the reality is, particularly in the South, I don't know about other places. I do know very well about the South. Respectability politics has been taught as holiness for us as black people.
That's true. That's true.
And we've got to overcome that, not for the generations that are younger, because they don't give up. It's for us to deal with. And as you talk about normalizing speaking out.
Yeah, that's exactly my point, Reverend Malcolm, is that the onus is on us to number one, set an example, and number two, to teach a constructive way to change the system, right? But I don't know if we can do that if we because that's one of the issues. The governor of the state of Georgia has forbidden the teaching of this so-called or this critical race theory, because he says that he calls it a dangerous ideology. Now,
It is. But he's not.
It's dangerous especially if we teach it with the same passion. Now, if we teach it from a position of objectivity, and we teach it as American history and not because we don't want to incite, we don't want to teach our young people to hate America. We don't want to teach our young people to hate white people. We don't want to teach.
Well, that's not what CRT is about. That's not what it's about. It's not. As I said before, it's not about hatred.
It's not.
And so so no, the onus is on us now to define it. Okay. Because for us and defining it.
That's right, Reverend Grant.
Reverend Grant, that's exactly what I'm saying. That's exactly what I'm saying. We have to be careful about how we teach, about how we approach teaching it. Because if we teach it in a certain way, our young people are listening to us. If we teach it in a certain way where we don't, we can very easily incite the kind of hatred that we want to avoid. That's my only point. That's my point when I say let us be about how we teach it, because we don't want to. And you're right, that is not what the critical race theory is about. It's not about that. Now, the 1619 project, I might have to lean toward us really being careful about the way in which the 1619 project is presented. You'd have to go and read the articles in the New York Times. I believe it was New York Times that published it, and to really understand how the impact and why the 1619 project has kind of revved up the conversation about the critical race theory. But
oh my gosh, I don't know if I agree with you, because look, we are not the ones who are presenting all of this. We didn't start this crap. We did not start it. Look, and even you're saying in the beginning, you're saying CRT was put on paper in the 1970s. We have been living this life. Okay, we have been living this life. And even in living this life and talking about with our kids and generations, we have not been doing so with hatred. Who brought in the hate? All of these folks within the last couple of years, and especially since when was election day again? Was it November? Since November 2020. Okay. All of the hatred has come out, has been spewed out since then, not because of us, but because of folks. So I don't want to put that hate on us.
I don't know if
I'm not gonna agree to that.
I think some of us can recall some of our family conversations and have a different perspective on that, Reverend Grant. Some of us,
Dr. White, I was telling my father that I'm thinking about opening an office in DC because I think that we need a voice in the South or from the South to be able to be that intermediary with DC. And my dad has said, "You don't want to go to DC." I said, "Why?" I had a bad experience in DC. I said, "So let me get this straight. Your limited experience in DC is going to limit me from having an experience in DC." I don't think so. And I think in listening at you, Dr. White, if we aren't careful, we will put ourselves on our young folk, which we've already done, and not allow for them to self-determine, which is oppressive. It's generationally oppressive.
All right, let's raise the offering. It's time to raise the offering. All right, it's time to raise the offering. All right.
Okay, so
It is my job to give the truth. It is your job to decide.
so wait, so let's just shift things a little bit because we all preachers. So what should the Black church do? How should the Black church intercede on this issue? Because I got we might agree a little bit on that piece.
I believe that the Black church should be teaching critical race theory in their schools, if they got schools, in their Sunday schools, in their Bible studies, preaching it from their pulpit. I think it should always somehow be a part of every service that you do.
That's agree.
What the Black church should be doing.
I agree. And would y'all argue or disagree with me that it used to be? What happened to the fact that we were the epicenter of every game? Every time you turned around, any game we got in this country, everything you ever seen, it was Reverend Smith, Reverend somebody who was the one arguing for it. Did the prosperity movement have that big? Was it that big a cancer?
I think it was. Yeah, it seems like it was.
I don't know if I would say that though. I don't know if I would say that the prosperity ministry had anything to do with that. I would think that, or say that, back in the day, the preacher was the most educated person in the community. All right.
Absolutely.
The preacher was the most vocal. The preacher was the most, Reverend Michael. The preacher was the most visible, right?
Absolutely.
But now, y'all, we got so many PhDs and MDs and EDs in our congregation that folks can speak on their own behalf, okay? And so we don't necessarily need to have the preacher speaking on our behalf. But as a faith community, we need to make sure that our voices are heard as a faith community. So we're not just relying on the preacher. We should rely on the community.
Who was it that said the pews should never be more educated than the pulpit? Who was that said? Because so I don't know who that was. But the pews should never be more. And if the pews got PhDs, we ought to have PhDs.
Some kind of D.
Reverend Grant, y'all about to get put out y'all church.
Look, they already know that I'm different, okay? They already know that this preacher will speak her mind. This preacher loves being Black, okay? And this preacher will speak the truth.
Malcolm, I'm already put out.
Not causing division, but
they don't know.
The truth.
They done already put me out.
Look, I thought this about to draw somewhere. This don't even belong to nobody. I just found it.
Hey, I had one of the men walk up to me one day and say, "Hey, are you a preacher or are you an activist?" I told him I was Jesus.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Preacher and activist.
That's right. So y'all know what I'm saying. I told him I was Jesus.
That's what got him.
If you look at that's what got him killed, and then I was able to give him a short lesson on the fact that yes, that's what got him killed, being an activist.
My God.
People don't really look at Jesus Christ as the first social activist. He very much was a social rights. He was
he did so in the vein of the prophets, though. He
Right.
did so in the vein because they were thrown in prison and killed and put in the lions' dens and not the lions' dens, but they were the ones who were thrown in prison before the prophets. But they didn't play; they carried sticks.
So if the Bible can teach about social change and can tell the story, and not always, and in the Bible, the stories in the Bible are all romantic. So if the Bible can do those things, right, then why can't we do those things, especially in the Black church and especially in our education system? We should be able to do it, but particularly in the church. And we haven't, even in African Methodism, that in such a denomination that was founded on social justice principles and social change. Our founder was a chief of social change. We have dropped the ball, especially in, I would say, in the past 20 to 30 years, in really teaching teaching our history the way we can effectively teach. And I say that I'll go even further and say that it's my generation that and I'm 54 years old, so it's my generation that has really dropped the ball on the young people these days in terms of teaching our history the way so that when young people engage in social activism, it's not a very constructive perspective. Now we're going to close out that conversation because I really wanted us to really have an opportunity to talk about what the church should do and how the critical race theory has played out in our history. Right now, we have the Perspectives on Social Justice is sponsoring a social justice camp for kids. The social justice camp for kids is geared toward children ages 11 to 17. We're teaching constructive social activism. If you're interested in, we offer both for online, virtual, as well as in person. As a matter of fact, we are scheduled to run our program in a number of vacation Bible schools this summer. And so if you are a church leader and you are interested in having a form of social justice camp for kids, for your kids to run as a part of your vacation Bible school, please visit our website. It's www.socialjusticecampforkids.com. And we'll be happy to register your group. They can also register for the online show. And so we're going to end our show on that note tonight. I want to thank my guest for being a part of this conversation. Reverend Malcolm has called this conversation a dope conversation, and that's exactly what it was. It's okay for us to disagree. I think perspectives are beautiful. I think it's kind of what makes this culture, American culture, as exciting as it is.
That's right.
Especially the African American culture, people of color. I love it when we can come together and have a discussion about these things. And now I leave you with those famous words of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, that whatever affects one of us affects all. And so on that note, we're going to say good night and join us. Our next show will be, I believe it's going to be on farming, but just stay tuned as we move through that. And my guess, we're going to stay for an after-show conversation. Welcome to Perspectives On, where we're giving the world a voice. We are a faith-based social justice forum where individuals give their perspectives on various topics. It's an opportunity to express their viewpoint, their stance, and their angle on justice issues affecting the community and globally. Each episode features guests presenting their perspective on things like climate change, the church, urban farming, and food insecurity, all through a unique faith lens. Come check us out. Give us your perspective.